Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, hello. I hope you
Thank
enjoyed
you.
that jizz music at the beginning.
All that delightful jizz.
I didn't realize how easy because I thought it would be hard to find. I completely forgot that there's a Disney park that has a bunch of jizz music. Jizz music. Oh God, I can't believe it's actually called that. I can't. I have a mind of a 12-year-old. So.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna continue our deep dive into the Star Wars lore, right? Right.
Well, it was originally me badly explaining it to you.
Yes, but I now it's you still kind of did that. All right. So I watched the prequels, most of it. I didn't finish the last one. We're gonna finish it tonight because my husband is also watching with me. Um, we've been doing watch parties on the prequels, right? So
Yeah.
I might have been under the influence of some things as I was watching it, but honestly, it made the experience so much better. It was so fun. Like my husband and I, we were like sitting with our glasses of wine, harshly critiquing Star Wars. It was mostly like the cinematography and everything. But and we would call and I would like we would call Abby and my husband and Abby would debate, so we would bring Abby into this as well. It was a fun time. It was a fun time. Great
I-
time.
I'm a little upset that we didn't think ahead of time to make this like a slumber party sleepover kind of thing.
Same, because I kept saying, "Oh God, we should have done this
But
watch
then
party
again,
with
I'm
you."
also kind of glad we did do that because I feel like me and Jack are so passionate about our interests that we wouldn't know how to back down per se, that we would just get into it. Your husband's not a bickering kind of man.
Unless it's Star Wars, apparently, because he was like,
I was about to say, but I feel like with this, it would rile him up enough that it would get to a good bicker with him.
yeah, I mean, it was like I know you all were talking about something, and then Jack, I was like,
Moss
Jack, don't worry about
Isis
it.
versus Moss Eisley.
Yes, and then Jack, I started talking to you, and then Jack immediately, while I was talking to you, pulls up the Wikipedia, and he was like, "See this," and I'm like, "Oh God, Jack, he's just as into it as you are." So we would never actually finish any of the films because y'all would be,
It
debating
would have to be a
everything.
whole kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. But it was fun, watching it. I was, inebriated. So it was fun watching you guys bicker and debate while I was just sitting there with my glass of wine, inebriated. But okay, so start off. Uh as a whole, I think the prequels was a little bit easy. Well, easier but harder to get through than the original 3. Because the original
Okay.
3 didn't take itself too seriously, obviously, right?
Right.
Whereas this took itself a little too seriously, if I'm being completely honest. Like the prequels.
Yeah.
Um, the first the first film felt kind of like the original in the sense of like it was just an adventure. A little
Yeah.
dull for my taste. I remember I watched it for the first time in theaters with my dad as like a father daughter date thing, but I think I was sleeping through it. And
No.
I only like I didn't really wake up until like they started doing the pod races and stuff because that to me was interesting.
They
You
did a
know,
great. I feel like as an adult now, with an appreciation for movies and the Star Wars franchise as a whole, the pod racing kind of removed you from the main storyline, but it was still
yeah,
interesting and entertaining enough that it didn't make the movie as a whole bad.
no, no, no. I also don't think that they should have added like small children in the film. Like nothing against Anakin's actor, the young Anakin actor. Cause he,
Unfortunately, that actor was completely bullied out of his acting career.
are you serious?
Yeah, I'm dead serious.
I don't think they should have. So my in his defense, okay, I don't think they should have casted a child for the role because of the fandom that Star Wars has. I hate to say it, but
But
Star
here's the thing, that we can say that in retrospect. We didn't know how that was going to
Obviously, because like it.
like. This is one of the things. This is the prequel. We
Yeah.
like it's been 20 plus years between episode 4 and episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, okay, so this is going to be for the new generation. This is going to
Yeah.
introduce the next generation.
But it didn't. It. I feel
But
like
here's the thing, they didn't understand or realize how toxic a fandom could
yes,
be.
that's the thing. I
Because
so
in reality, it's probably one of the first real major mainstream media with a large gap between like originals and prequels or originals and any continuations. Hi, Nasium.
I
Um,
now see him.
with a major fan base. And it's one of those things that's just like it they wouldn't have known. But that's also why our generation as like because like you, my dad took me and my sister and it like my mom was included as well because my
Mm-hmm.
mom was like a nerd by association. Um like my dad didn't have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
My parents didn't have a problem like with it per se. It wasn't the greatest, but they didn't have a problem with it because there wasn't anything terrible about it. That would affect me as a human being and my education.
Sorry, 1 second. My husband's also
We
texting me.
as now you're good. We as adults now that watch this as children and didn't understand it's like, oh, why haven't we seen Anakin as a like the
Right.
child Anakin in acting roles? Why was Hayden Christensen only in like
Mm-hmm.
Looper, I think is the movie that he was in, or Jumper? I don't remember which one because there were two very similar movies with like superpowers that
Yeah.
came out around the same time. It's like, why did Hayden Christensen only get like one other movie and then like, or like one other like movie franchise or whatever, and then nothing else? Like, what? Us as adults now realize what the fuck happened.
See,
Toxic ass fans, and that's why like you've heard me over and over and over again, like really shut shit down, especially when it comes to children. I'm like Leia, like
yeah.
year old Leia in Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm like, y'all leave her the fuck alone. She's actually really, really fucking good. That's
Right.
why Ewan McGregor is standing up for Rivka's actress and Leia's actress for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Is like, y'all need to stop. This is why I'm like, hey, I hate that the live action Cowboy Bebop didn't get a second season.
Right.
But the actress who plays Ed does not deserve what the fuck
Right.
they're fucking around.
I will
Like they
say,
don't.
yeah, I will say when I was watching the first cuz Jack and I were talking, Jack my husband and I were talking about also Jar Jar Binks. And I'm like, first of all, they put too much pressure like because the voice actor said he was on the brink of suicide because of the toxic fandom, and I'm like he was bullied as well as a fucking child because I was when we were watching the first film I was like the child you could tell he was a very much a child actor, you know, who I don't know if this was his first role, but it was very like amateur child acting, right? But the lines
Yeah,
didn't
and
fit
like
his
there are some
acting.
really good, great child actors.
Yes, there are.
They're really good, but
But
he just wasn't.
no, it wasn't the fact that he wasn't great. I just feel like they took themselves too seriously and they because of it they shouldn't have hired a child. Cuz and
Well, they had to hire a
I
child.
know they did, but like they could have probably worked around it. I don't know. It was
No, they
just
couldn't have. No, they couldn't have
they could have
because
made
it's one of those
Anakin
things
a
that
little
no,
they could have made Anakin maybe like a teen or something. I don't know. I don't know.
no, they couldn't have.
They retconned a lot of things. They could have
No, no,
retconned.
but here's the thing. There's a reason why, like, Anakin could not be older than 9 or 10 years old. He's nine.
No, right. No,
Nine.
no, no. So
But no, 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 no.
Natalie
Here's the thing. You cannot because the Jedi, like, collect the force sensitive children in the Republic
yes.
at a young age, at
No,
like four, 3 or 4
that's not
years
what I'm
old.
saying. I'm saying they could have okay, in act like actors, even Natalie Portman who was Amidala. Her
Hmm.
character is 14, but when she started, she was not 14. She was much older. They just aged her down. They could have done
But there's
something
only so much you can do about that,
right, but
though.
they could have done something similar along the lines of that for because the actor that they chose for Anakin was that age. Like I think he was either that age or younger than the age that they were looking for Anakin. And again, this is all in hindsight, right? I don't know how it was in the early 2000s because I will say the early 2000s children actors, if you see them today, they are not okay. A lot of them are not okay. But um, that's my only qualm
Don't
with the
blame them,
first.
though.
I don't blame them. Yeah, but like that was my qualm because in 2000s, just child actors just boomed because of Disney, right? And other things, but Disney. Um, but that was the only trying to get back to like the topic of Star Wars Episode One. That was the only like qualm I had is when I was watching it, I was like, if I can tell that the actor is, very amateurish, I know that the fandom would slaughter him. Like they would just eat him alive. The same with Jar Jar. I know he's annoying. Like the character is I genuinely think the character is supposed to be annoying. But
He
like
was supposed to be for the children.
exactly. And as a kid, I actually liked him. I remembered he was the only character I liked as a child.
Agreed. Hmm.
Because
Well,
I watched it as a kid and I was like, okay, he's fine. A little annoying, but I get it. It's funny, right?
yeah.
I did not see why it was like people would just fucking took him out in the first film. In the second film, he was okay. He barely had any lines or anything, right?
Well, that's the thing. That's why it's like there was too much focus on Jar Jar in the first one, and that made people mad because he was so annoying, especially
Oh,
to the adult.
yeah. But I mean, he wasn't as annoying as I think people made him out to be, in my personal opinion. I don't know. I don't know. Um, I enjoyed the first
We
one.
may have a bias since we watched it as children.
We might, yeah. That might be it. That might be it.
Like I'm not sure about that. I agree with you. I don't think he was that annoying. I do think there was a little too much of him in
Yeah.
all honesty, especially with nothing kind of resulting like it kind of did and kind of didn't. Apparently originally there are theories that Jar Jar Binks was actually supposed to be one of the Sith apprentices.
Which made sense as they did it, because like when what?
Especially when you watch like his storyline and everything.
Yes.
If he was because in the prequels and I think even in the originals, um, but it's like reinforced anytime the Sith come up, there can only be two.
Mm-hmm.
So we had Darth Sidious, um, and then his apprentice, his named apprentice is Darth Maul,
Mm-hmm.
who is my favorite actor, like character, like period. Like I was obsessed with that character as a child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that there are oftentimes those others who are sensitive in the Force, like in the dark side of the Force, or can be trained to be sensitive in the dark side of the Force, um, that are either apprenticed to the apprentice,
Mm-hmm.
um, or like are used by Darth Sidious to help move forward with his plans. Um, it's not ever really explained to me like who he like aligned to either Maul or Sidious. But he was used as like another force sensitive pawn.
So okay, all right. Before we get
Mm,
into all that, because I have questions, and I'm probably going to redo a lot of the questions I asked you last night in
that's
my
fine.
inebriated state. Um, I'm going to
But you
power.
understood what I was talking about when I was explaining it to you that it got really political,
It
and if you're
did.
not prepared for it, it's going to
Yeah.
confuse you really bad.
So this is the thing. So again, I watched it with my husband and we were debating about a lot of the things in the films and everything. So the first one wasn't that political. It was setting up like the first domino, I could tell, of the characters we would be following, you know,
It had a
Obi-Wan.
lot of politics in it for a kids movie.
It did when it came to like Qui-Gon, Jinn, and
Did it and the Trade Federation? Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and the Trade Federation, which
Mhm.
Jack was also trying to explain to me. But this is the thing, which I think I asked you about it, is
Mhm.
at the time he was Senator
Yes.
Palpatine, okay,
Yes.
and I
Mhm.
saw how
No,
he
no, no, not Senator. Yes, Senator Palpatine.
Senator Palpatine.
This
Um,
this is getting as bad as like the Untamed and Modal Zushi, where everyone has like six different names, and it's
yeah,
just like, wait,
this
yes,
no in the first one he is a senator, okay.
yes,
So he's a senator in the first film, and he is also the is he a Sith Lord? No, yes, because he's the first of the
yes.
Sith that comes back, right? And there's always two. Apparently, there always will be two.
That really, we'll get to that in a minute, but he is the
Exactly,
current
because there's
Lord.
yes, Lord, Sith Lord.
He is the Sith Lord. He is the master. So there's always with it's the rule of two with the Sith.
Hmm.
There's a master and an apprentice.
An
He is the
apprentice.
master. Darth Sidious is the master.
Yes. So Darth Sidious is the master, and we see Darth Maul, which again, I at the time I was like, they killed him off. Why are there so many toys? Like, why are there so many things with Darth Maul on it? He comes he comes back, but at the time when I was watching it in my drunk state, I was like, if they killed him off in the first film, right? Spoilers. Then why did they sell so many toys of him? I remember saying that when I was a kid, right? It's like,
Like
why?
he was supposed to be the Phantom Menace, is what he was.
Mm-hmm.
He was the named character.
He was.
Underappreciated. We should have had Darth Maul. But the reason why he is so popular to this day still is because he didn't, as you said, he did not die. He actually comes back in the Clone Wars show.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know
And
that.
it's like a major villain and a major character in the show.
Yeah, in the
And it
show
actually
though.
ties into one of the more modern movies, Solo, that you had no idea about.
See, like that's the thing. When I saw it, I didn't know he came back. My husband told me he came back, and he was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, he'll come back." And I was like, "But okay, okay, all
He's
right
only
then."
cut in two at the waist, so he has more than enough
Yes.
like ability to live.
I
Instantly
guess.
cauterized,
I,
it's
gu-
fine.
I guess. I mean, I guess in space, or would they have the technology for that? Because in my personal, in this time period, if you get cut in half, that's it. It's over. But it's
Well, like
just me.
you, I keep telling you, you really, really need to watch the Clone
I
Wars
do.
because it
The
gives
show.
so much because it explains what actually happened um after he was cut in half
Mm. So
and
probably
his
not
like
David Tennant says.
downfall. Huh?
Probably not David Tennant says. I thought Palpy was the Phantom Menace.
I don't know, maybe. I again, as a child that didn't really get have like a fandom community until I
Mm-hmm.
was an adult. Growing up, I was told that it was Maul. Now, I could be wrong because again, I didn't really find my Star Wars community until I was an adult.
Yeah, yeah, same.
Um, and even then, it's only been within the past few years that I've really dived into the Star Wars community.
Right, right.
And there's so much at this point that tiny little things like that don't always get brought up, especially since it's a little on the older side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as I explained last week, or the week before, it's a base level to everything modern. So you don't have to like remember everything for the current stuff to be important.
Yeah, yeah. I guess so. Well, unless it's the shows, because like I do want to. Eventually, I'll tackle that. It just is going to be eventually, because now I'm tackling Jack Chan. But
That
eventually I'll tackle
well,
that.
you're not going to be able to watch it like do a watch party with
No,
it
I
because
can't.
it's
I
with
know. I'm
people.
just saying, like outside of that, I'm tackling one show at a time, one kid show at a
Yeah.
time. So the first. So yeah, sorry. Getting back on track. The first film was the first Domino. I enjoyed it. It was nice. The only thing that I could tell that we really needed to focus on was Senator Palpatine's rise to power, because you didn't see much of the manipulation as much in the first film, right? You
You
definitely saw it.
saw it, you knew where to look.
Yeah, you knew where to look, but you like it wasn't
Like
like.
I had to like when you called me and asked me questions, I'm like, no, no, you have to look at like everything at play
Mm-hmm.
because it is massive and interconnected.
Oh, for
Um,
sure, they're definitely
but like
interconnected.
the true like depth of everything, like the backup plans and everything like that, you don't really get that until like the next two movies, and then when you really get into the show,
Mm.
which is fair because the movies just don't have enough time to get into those.
No, that is true. That is true. Because the second, again, the first one done. They won the pod races. They saved the day. Anakin was being a little clumsy boy, but he ended up saving the day, which I thought was really cute. Just accidentally saved the day in the first film. The second film, however, was so
Actually,
dense.
it was never accidental. There are no like
Acc-
coincidences
right,
and
but
accidents.
okay, yes, in the sense of he did not know what he was doing though. Like in
How so?
when he reached the Trade Federation ship, it was by accident because
It was by accident, but that was the force at work.
right, but again,
It's that's the thing. It's like to us on Earth with no force, yes, it's an accident.
right, but
Within the Star Wars franchise, that's not an
what I'm
accident. That's
trying to
the
say,
force at work.
what I'm trying to say is that he was completely unaware, completely, because he was just trying to he get out, right? He was shooting these droids, get out, and all that. He accidentally, or I guess by the use of the force, that he did not know he had this child, completely unaware of everything that he did. All right, he shot the main reactor for the ship that caused the ship to blow up, and he didn't even realize he
Mhm.
did it. Like we were watching, and I sat and I was talking to my husband, and I was like, so he literally just accidentally, unaware, just saved the day. And my husband was like, yeah, I
Yes
guess so.
and no.
Yeah, well,
He was trying to get himself out,
yeah,
and he's like, "This regular guns were not working. Let's try this
yeah,
button," and it just like did that, and it's just like, "Oh well,
like a mind of a child,
it
unaware.
worked. It's not what I wanted, but it worked. Let's get out of here."
Yeah, but again, unaware of the damage he would cause. Which this is why I bring it up. I feel like that's a common thing for Anakin to do, is that he's completely unaware of the damage he causes of a lot of things, in my opinion. In the second,
Yeah, I can understand.
yeah, you see, but in the second film, it is so dense. The second film was a lot denser. I know this because we kept pausing a lot, my husband and I, to talk about it.
Can I just say before we move on
Yes.
from the first one, I genuinely believe the first one has held up the best of the prequels
Oh, I think so. I
for
enjoyed it
many
as
many
a
reasons. A lot of it was still practical effects, so like a
yes.
lot of the like wide scenes, so like the pod racing in the arena and stuff were
Mm-hmm.
all practical set like miniatures that they did. Even though the Gungans and so like Jar Jar Binks's race,
Mm-hmm.
the Gungans and the droids and everything were CGI. Um, the field that the battle was on was
Yep.
real. That was like
Oh
real
wow.
grass, so that didn't like deter that. Like a lot of the floors were not green screen; they were actual floors, even though they may have been surrounded by green screen. The floors were real.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I did
so
call
it's
it.
like
Go ahead. Go ahead. I will let you finish.
the explosions, most of the explosions. Now we do. It does get a little bit better when we go into the third movie.
Yeah.
But it's still really bad. Um, Nearly all of the explosions were practical explosions in the first movie. So they weren't like CGI explosions.
Yeah, well, this
So
is also the time where CGI was huge. So of course, being able to create a lot of things through CGI, they took it and ran with it, including, as David Tennant says, or not David Tennant,
yeah,
Yoda. It was no longer practical effects. But honestly, I'm glad the CG wasn't as bad. Like, it's bad, but not that bad, especially for Yoda. Like, it still holds up.
right.
I did call and tell you that the settings, like the different worlds,
Mm-hmm.
was so much prettier in the prequels than
You cut
any of
out.
the films so far, including the most recent ones. And this is why the Gungan underwater city was so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yes.
what is it? Not the Republic, but like there's a city there that was also stunning. There, like, these worlds were so colorful, so bright, and yes, it would have been CG, but it was stunning.
Which one are we talking about? Are we talking about Naboo's capital or Coruscant?
Both, like, just in general, the worlds, like how they created in CG, and the settings for a lot of these were so pretty. In the second film, like on Naboo, it was like
Yeah.
green. It was really beautiful. Like, it's so
And we were
pretty.
getting outside of the cities when we would return to Naboo. We were actually
Yes,
getting like countrysides and lakesides.
yes, but even the sets for the spaceships were so pretty. Okay,
Yeah.
like they were stunning, and I could tell like the difference between the earlier films, 4, 5, and 6, and the prequels.
Mm.
It was just they really took their time in creating like these different worlds, these settings for Star Wars. And I appreciate that, because even in the most recent films, a lot of it is like darker gray kind of, you know, it's not as colorful and bright, and I don't know, depending
That
on the worlds.
that's kind of like an aesthetic thing.
I think so.
It's
They did really
kind of
well.
intentional. It's kind of intentional. Um, that it is.
Oh, with pouring
Um,
salt? That's awesome, Nasim. I didn't know that.
it so within the originals, it's really dark in a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we get some like neutral areas, but the galaxy as a whole is under the influence of the Sith,
Mm-hmm.
so under the dark side. So it has this like darker tone. Um, in the prequels, the Jedi are still in control. The Sith are supposed to be extinct. They're not supposed to be existing at all. So everything is light and happy, which I hang on. I had a thought and I can't. Okay, so I don't know if you noticed this between episode 4 and episode 1, but in the originals, nobody had any idea about the Jedi, or just claimed that the Jedi were stories, that they didn't exist, that they were old, like wives' tale that never
No,
existed.
yeah, I caught that.
But in prequels, everybody knew what a Jedi was
Yeah, because there
and
was
understood
only
what
Jedi
that
at the time.
there was this force that they used, that they like a lot of like societies would refer to the Jedi's as wizards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and understood that the force was a thing. Um, in the originals, nobody knew. Nobody is like, it's one of those things that's just like they didn't exist. The wizards no longer existed. They were all stories and fables and things like that.
Which
In the
makes
originals,
I was like, it makes no sense because, well, it makes sense, but also no sense, because how would they erase the history of the Jedi so fast within a span of like a few decades? Does that make sense? I know, I
there.
know, I know, I know.
Like you're like, how can that happen in a couple of decades? And it's just like it it does.
It's just so crazy that people are like, "Oh, it's a myth, it's a legend." Not really, because I mean, you have Darth Vader, a Sith Lord, so wouldn't you like know to have a Jedi? Like it. Okay, all right, hold on. we're
Not
getting ahead of
necessarily.
ourselves, because I still want to talk about the second film.
Okay,
Okay,
go ahead, go ahead, go
okay.
ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. Before we get into all that, so in the second film, like I said, it was very dense, which is where I think a lot of the lore from the shows would come from, because a
Yes,
problem.
because the show is to retcon, like not retcon, but like save the trilogy, the prequel. That's the entire point of the show, was to save the prequel.
Yeah. Okay, okay, good, because
Not
like,
necessarily like retcon it, but definitely save it, because watching 2 and 3 at like having Clone Wars still fresh to
mm-hmm.
me is jarring, because it's like, this isn't the Obi-Wan I know at all. This is not the
Yeah,
relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin that I know.
because in the first movie, they really didn't have an established relationship because it was Qui Gon who had the relationship with Anakin, right?
Right, because they didn't really meet until much later and
Much
didn't really have
later.
a chance to develop a friendship, because they were going in hot and fast into like a war on Naboo.
Exactly. Exactly. So 10 years later, they arrive, they're seeing now Senator, not Queen Padme, but Senator Padme, um, at the Republic and everything, right? I
Yes.
still do not understand the politics of the Jedi versus like the Republic and those kind of things, because the Jedi Order doesn't surpass like Republic Order, right? But they also don't pay attention to politics. But for some reason, the Republic still uses them. Like, do you get what I'm saying? It makes no sense.
So the Jedi's are peacekeepers. We're
Right.
supposed to be peacekeepers.
What,
They
what,
have
yeah.
fallen. They have kind of like fallen from their teachings in a sense, because there's never been any kind of conflict for them, major conflict for them
Mm-hmm.
in a very long time. So they've gotten comfortable and gotten
Mm.
lazy. Um, so
Because, like,
they,
can you
it's like,
explain?
I'm like, how do I explain this? Because especially in
Th-
two, this is before they did kind of try and like keep their distance, but also kind of like, they're peacekeepers. They're supposed to be peacekeepers, but then they become generals
yeah.
and influential people for the Senate when the Clone Wars actually, like during the Clone
Yeah,
Wars.
during the Clone Wars. But I understand that they're held in high regard, right? I understand that. Um, so it doesn't make it's, it doesn't. Okay, hold on. So why did the council get involved in leading the Clone Wars? Yeah, like that. Also, I'm pretty sure probably not David Tennant. Uh, are you my husband? I think you might be my husband, because these are the questions he asked. Like, this is the thing. Yeah, how did they get involved in leading the Clone Wars? Because that happened in the second film.
Okay.
Because they sent it out and they were scouting.
They the reason why the council, the Jedi Council, that's who he's referring to. I'm assuming you're
Oh, he said
a
no.
he. I'm
Okay.
so sorry, probably not David Tennant. Um, so so the Jedi Council is kind of like inserting themselves into like the Senate's business, because they don't like what Palpatine is being very, very sketchy to them. And they're trying, I like, it's really hard to explain,
That's the thing.
especially for
Yeah.
me who's really like communicating. Um
Because, like,
so
it was something
for
that we didn't realize. There's a lot
go
of
ahead.
plot holes, right? In the prequels, that I thought the show, and I'm sure the show actually filled in a lot of them,
Yes.
you know. Um, so that's the thing I thought that it was, but because in watching it, like what probably not David Tennant said, like, was that answered at all? Was there like a deeper connection we just don't see in the films? Because in the second film, let me go ahead and say, As I was watching with my husband, it was just a romance film for the majority of it. It followed the bodyguard, protecting the princess trope. Do you know what I mean? At
Yeah,
least for Anakin's side, right?
right.
Whereas, Obi-Wan actually found like the secret clones that another Jedi okayed.
Sorry for the
Yeah, that okayed them to create for the Republic. That not apparently none of the others
That
Jedi Order.
storyline with Sifo-Dyas and like why he commissioned the Kaminoans to create the
Yeah,
clones and everything like that is actually explored in Clone Wars. It is actually explained. Um, I I could be wrong. It's been 3 years since I've watched Clone Wars. Um, and there's a lot of plot happening in Clone Wars that it's a little fuzzy. I think Darth Tyrannus um had commissioned Sifo-Dyas to create the clone army.
mm.
No, I don't think so. I think it may have actually been Senator Palpatine that did it because it's for the Republic.
Okay,
And
since I
Darth Tyrannus is Lord or Count Dooku, and he's for the Separatists, so it would have been for the Separatists. So I'm a little fuzzy on that. I'm gonna eventually have to go back and watch Clone Wars because everything is so connected now that it's
it
just
is
better
very connected.
and fresh.
I was about to say it seems very connected, but the reason why I say that the second film is dense is because you first start with trying to figure out
Wait,
who
wait, hang
Amidala's.
on, hang
Oh
on,
yes, hello.
hang on, hang on, hang on,
I'm
hang on, hang on.
hanging on. Yes.
Probably not David Tennant. What do you mean by I always thought Palpatine was Sifo-Dyas? Okay, never mind, never mind, never mind. No, Sifo-Dyas is is an actual Jedi Master. He is a known Jedi Master. Um, on the council. He was on the council, but he disappeared 10 years, quote unquote. We're in episode 2, so quote unquote disappeared 10 years ago. Right. No, he is his own person. Again, highly suggest watching Clone Wars. It does actually explain it better, but to me, they would have, like, Palpatine never would have stepped into the Jedi Temple.
Oh my God. Also, probably not David Tennant is my husband.
Is he?
Yeah, I texted him. I was like, he's asking a lot of questions we were asking. That's why I asked. And he was like, it is me. This motherfucker. But
I didn't
anyway,
know earlier.
yeah, I should have known. But yes, sorry, we
Your
need to.
husband, not husband, David Tennant.
Yeah, my husband, not husband, David Tennant. So I do want to take time with the second and third film because I feel like that's where the meat of everything is. Because again, it's very, like you said, it was very political, and it is. It really is, in terms of the lore. Because first of all, it was mentioned in the first. It was mentioned in the first film.
Mm-hmm.
Midichlorians, the powerhouse of the
Yep.
Force, was mentioned
Yep.
for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And that Anakin has a high count, the highest count ever seen in a Jedi of
Mm-hmm.
midichlorian, right?
Yep. Over 20,000.
It was over 20,000, yes. And that they think that he was the chosen one for this prophecy, right, to bring balance to the Force. And
Right.
the way that my husband explained it to me this morning was that the Jedi Order thought that it was going to keep the Jedi in power, but in reality, bringing balance to the Force means bringing back the dark side, the Sith.
No.
Is it because I thought there was
No.
so there was no Sith at the time, and the Jedi was
No,
in
no. There
power.
were Sith at the time. We know that because there's um Darth Sidious
Yes,
and Darth Maul
but
and
they didn't find that.
recorded.
Yes, 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 but they didn't find out about Darth Sidious and Darth Maul until the end of the first film. They're like, oh, if there's one, there's going to be Two, because with every master there is an apprentice, and that's where.
Mm, no, 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 because Qui-Gon met Darth Maul on Tatooine and he reported it back to the council and they're like, it could be the Sith. We need to keep an eye out for the master. We don't know if it's the master or the apprentice.
Right, but there hasn't been Sith in 1,000 years, is what one of the Jedi Council members had said. That's what I mean. So it's the Force is unbalanced currently because there are more Jedi than there are Sith. It
To an extent, but there is a Sith that has or is gaining too much power.
Yes. But like again, this is how it was explained. The reason why Anakin is bringing balance to is because the Sith do not have, as like the Jedi has, like you said, controls everything. They got lazy. There was no Sith, well, at least until the time, to keep an eye out for. There is not a lot of
Again,
Sith in
to an
power.
extent, we it. I can explain this better than your husband can because, like, the Force has been explained in Clone Wars, and I'm like, this is what I lost my shit about to you when we worked together and I was
Yeah.
watching Clone Wars, is that there are fucking breathtaking, gorgeous episodes that actually explain, like, that are visually beautiful, that explain the Force. And what it is that there is imbalance in the Force because there's a Sith that is far too strong and the Jedi are far too numerous. And what has
Mm-hmm.
happened is the reason why Anakin came about, quote unquote, through a virgin birth. Yes,
The
Christ,
Jesus,
the
I literally, so okay,
Jesus trope. Yes,
I
is
okay.
because he like the reason Anakin was created was because the Sith made him. We get that explanation in episode 3. Like, that's why I warned you. I'm like, there is explanation on why Anakin is created in episode 3 through exposition that you need to pay attention to, and you can ask me questions once you get to it, but it is an exposition.
I was about to
Is
say
that Anakin was created by the dark side to, like,
interesting.
kind of be like a host,
So
to kind of be like transferred over kind of situation.
I do not remember
Anakin was
that.
created by the Force to be the chosen one to, like, dissipate the Force that has been concentrated and stagnant in these two areas. The Force is not flowing like it needs to do.
Ah,
So Anakin,
okay.
unfortunately, failed at that because of his upbringing. His
Ah.
mother was his mother and Qui-Gon were the true balance between him, but he lost both of them. He was taken from his mother, and
Mm-hmm.
Qui-Gon was. So what he was really intended to do was to remove both of them. He killed the Jedi Temple in the prequels. He is the one that kills Palpatine
Mm-hmm.
in the originals. He is the one that kills, like, levels both of them and allows the Force to flow freely again.
So the whole point is that he needed to kill off all the Jedi temples. Like there should be no Jedi and no Sith, just the Force. Is that the end goal?
Not really.
Okay, okay, that's the
The
thing.
Force, okay, but here's the thing. It as I was saying, those forces were being stagnated in between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
So Darth Sidious was holding on to too much power
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because he
yeah.
got greedy and it was
Mm-hmm.
stagnating and causing an imbalance in the Force. And then the Jedi Temple was growing too large and becoming too comfortable in themselves, and that was
Okay,
causing a stagnation in the Force as well.
okay.
So, so the chosen one is kind of the one that, quote unquote, retcons everything.
Mm. Okay. All right.
But
I see where you're going.
because of Palpatine,
Mm-hmm.
emotional and mental manipulation, because that's what it was,
Which I actually
he caused
appreciated.
this imbalance to where the dark side was in control for far too long.
Yeah.
It is explained that Anakin is ideally Anakin was supposed to be the one that brought balance instead of like leveling everything,
Mm-hmm.
kind of being like a body checker between the two. It's just like, hey, y'all are like being fucking arrogant in the council. Y'all need to check yourselves. Hey, you have too much power. You need to fucking chill with the Sith. Like
I
that's
got it.
and it's
I see.
explained fucking beautifully in the goddamn show, ma'am. I
Okay.
need
Well, that's.
but there is also a fourth side of the force. So there's a light side and a dark side,
Mm-hmm.
and then there is the balance. But also because dark and light are opposites, there is an opposite to balance and it is chaos.
Chaos.
And chaos sometimes is needed to help bring everything back into balance.
Hmm.
Because sometimes you cannot balance without removing structure, and sometimes you need that chaos to remove that structure.
I see. Okay. Okay. I see. I see
But
what
a
you're getting
lot
at.
of people, like, you have to go into like deep lore, like outside of
That's
the
what I'm
shows
asking.
to
Oh,
understand what and who chaos is. Because there is a physical representation of all four of those.
interesting. Interesting. Okay. I won't know this
So
because
watch the goddamn shows,
I
ma'am.
can't right now. I have a huge backlog if you can't tell. So, doesn't Ray Saga go against this
Bitch,
in.
we're not at the sequels yet.
Yeah,
Calm
we're
down.
watching that.
Shut your
That's for
face.
next week. That's for next week's lore. We'll watch that this next weekend. Because we're getting
You
into
want
the Ray
opinions?
saga.
Get on the podcast.
No, I was about to say, oh, if you want him to, he'll get on here. You know that, right?
I
But then
think
we'll never
let
get
us.
anywhere.
I was about to say, let us get through the Skywalker sagas, and then, like, obviously, I'm getting into the shows,
But
the
that's
more
what I'm
current
like. Yeah,
into stuff. Once we're done with the Skywalker sagas and probably the two additional movies, then I have no problem bringing him on and like bickering with him.
that I think that would be nice to hear. I'll sip with my glass of wine to do it all over again.
I was about to say, but let's get through our outline
Yes.
first, and then we'll bring him in.
So I'm moving between 2 and 3 in this area because I do think that. All right.
Yes, yes,
I
because
actually appreciate Emperor Palpatine's manipulation because you see it so
yes,
prominently in both the second and third film, right? You see it more.
he's actually a chancellor in these.
Yes, he's a chancellor, and he manipulated Padme into making him chancellor.
Padme and so Padme in the first one,
Mm-hmm.
and then um
But Padme caught
Jar
on
Jar
pretty
Binks
quickly.
technically in the second one.
Mm-hmm. She did. Mm-hmm.
Um, so he like it's again, it's like the manipulation of Palpatine is just like phenomenal.
It is the way that
That
because
is
he
the
was like, oh, the Republic isn't going to help you because the Chancellor is a weak piece of shit. How about you,
yep,
how about you take him out and then request like a new Chancellor? And then, of
like an
course,
emergency chancellor, blah blah blah, all this
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
because he's like, if you made me Chancellor, I can help you. And at that time, she was desperate. He used her desperation to protect her people to rise to
Hmm.
power, which I thought was really, really well done. In
Yep.
terms like because you never see that. You see like a villain as being, very aggressive and all that, but he was calm, collected, and calculated as a villain, except on the third film, and this is why. At
Yes.
the in the third film, when oh, before we jump ahead to the third film, I
Okay.
want to talk about Count Dooku because he makes no sense to me. Count
Okay.
Dooku was not a Sith Lord in the second film.
Yes, he was.
They never mentioned him to be a Sith Lord in the first film. They only mentioned it in the
Because
third, which made no sense
okay,
because like,
no, it makes sense. It
oh my
makes sense.
god.
I
Okay.
promise. Because in the second film, this is pre Clone Wars.
Yeah. Well, no.
Jedi's
Yeah,
do
yeah.
not understand really that Palpatine has gotten another apprentice, a new apprentice,
Mhm.
or that they might have. Well, it's explained from Count Dooku to Obi-Wan when Obi-Wan's like captured on Geonosis. Um, I'm sorry, I'm throwing just words out there that you have no idea. Geonosis is the planet that triggered the start of the Clone Wars.
Yes, that was where he
Um,
was held at the time. He
and
regarded.
they talk about Lord Tyrannus.
Mm-hmm.
That is his name. That is his Sith name. He just because he is a representation and the leader of the Separatists, he does not go by Lord Tyrannus. He goes by his original name, Dooku.
This
He is a
okay.
count because he has land, he has property, he has a
Right, right, right.
planet that he cares for as a count.
It was something that was for me. Again, I haven't seen the shows or anything, but this was even before the shows.
Hmm.
When I watched the second film again, because I think I watched the second film the least out of all three. I know I've seen the third one many times as well as the first. I
Yes.
was confused about Count Dooku because it literally seemed like he appeared out of nowhere. He talked to Obi-Wan like it was an old friend of his, right? Like a part of the Jedi
Because
Order.
he was.
Right.
It was like kinda. And it's explained in that dialogue that Obi-Wan's master, Qui-Gon Jinn, so Liam Neeson's character from the first one, was Dooku's last apprentice.
Okay.
Because Dooku was a former Jedi,
He was. He was Yoda's uh
final apprentice.
yes, there we go. Thank you. Apprentice. And but then he went over to the dark side. But I did not
Because
realize he
he
was
was warning the Jedi Council that it's like Dooku was the biggest advocate is just like no, we're getting too comfortable, no, this there are Sith active right now and the council would not believe him.
oh God, Jack, with your fucking. Did Count Dooku understand that he was in cahoots with Sidious or Palpatine? He wanted to fucking use
Yes,
that joke.
absolutely.
Cahoots, get out of here. Um, but I didn't think so. I thought there was only one Sith Lord, and that would have been Lord Sidious. I didn't know
No,
that there.
it's a title.
Okay, so you can have
Like
more than one
Lord
Lord.
and Darth will be interchangeable and they can be applied to both of them, but they are the primary Sith. As I was kind of like
So there's
loosely saying earlier, there are other people that can be force sensitive into the dark side, but if they are not of the two, they are not going to be Darth slash Lord.
so there could be more than one Lord, Sith Lord. So then, what was this? Is what confused me then because
Not necessarily. Not
wait, you're
necessarily.
contradicting yourself then because like, okay, this is what confused me. In
Okay.
the second film, they
Yes.
said, or in the first film, they're like, oh, if there is one Sith Lord, there is like an apprentice. We got to watch it. So in their mind, there's
Yes.
only two. When they got rid of Darth Maul, they
Yes.
think, okay, it's back to one. But in reality, there is more than one master. There is the
No. There's only one master, and there's only one apprentice to that master. That is the rule of two for the Sith.
right, but he's still considered a lord, a Sith Lord, despite him not
Dooku.
being, yes, an apprentice.
No, because he was not of the dark side until after Qui-Gon died.
But he wasn't even in the first film. Count Dooku wasn't in the first film.
Ma'am, do you need another fucking person to follow in the first film?
No, that's what I mean. Like that's the thing. Like that's why it's so confusing because he how do
That's
we
what the
know
exposition is for.
right, but how because of Qui-Gon you said, right?
Hit the death of Qui-Gon triggered him to seek out Darth Sidious and turn to the dark side.
Okay. That is okay. That it doesn't compute in my brain. That whole Count
How does
Dooku
it
thing,
not compute?
And so okay, all of Count Dooku, everything that he is as a character does not compute in my brain because of this. Because he was the main, I guess, villain, quote unquote, bad guy, but not really in the second, right? Because he was like, we need
Yes,
to go against the Republic because the Republic ain't, is not that great. And then the reality is true because the Republic is kind of losing power at the moment, but
hmm
not really because they're giving power over to, you know, slowly giving power over to the Chancellor, right?
yes.
Except that he has also being manipulated by the Chancellor in the trade federation.
He's not being manipulated. He is will as the apprentice of Darth Sidious,
Yeah.
who he knows and stated that they're like the Senate is being controlled by a Sith Lord.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes.
He does not specify if it's master or apprentice though, because he knows that subtlety is
Mm,
key.
mm-hmm. Okay.
He states that because he knows that his master is instructing him on how to manipulate the separatist so that his master has like his master's plan is going according to how it needs to go.
Got
He
it. I
understands
think.
that he is a not necessarily a pawn, but he knows that he is executing specifically the will of his master.
Uh-huh.
Does that help?
No, but because I feel like at this point, Count Dooku's character could be rendered useless in the third film because what is the point of all right.
Okay.
I feel like there has been a something lost in translation between the second and the third film. There's a jump that I did not understand going into the third.
There's a 3 year jump
Right, right, right.
because it's canonically how long the Clone Wars last from the moment of Geonosis to the rise of the Empire at the very end of 3.
Right. And also, probably not David Tennant says, did the Jedi forget they all agreed about the rule of two at the end of TPM, The Phantom Menace? I guess
I'm
so.
confused by that. I'm confused by that.
The rule of two being a master and a
But there's always
apprentice.
been two.
No? Yeah. Well,
There's always been two. Again, Dooku didn't come about until after Qui Gon
see,
died.
I really
Qui
wish they
Gon
would have
died
done more
right
of that.
before the execution of, or quote unquote, execution of Darth Maul. We find out in the show he didn't actually die, but he is no longer the apprentice of the Sith.
Right. I really
So
wish.
he is not two. He is not part of the two, but he is still sensitive in the dark side of the Force. That people can be sensitive in the Force without being a Jedi and without being a Sith,
Yeah.
and they can be influenced by either side of the dark or the light. I think what may be confusing you at this point is that Jedi are synonymous with light, or like interchangeable with light, and Sith are interchangeable with dark.
No, no, that
And
doesn't
that's
confuse
not
me.
the case.
No, that's
Jedi and Sith are.
that's not what's confusing me. That I'm talking about, like, I think it's just a writing. And in all honesty, I think it's just poor writing. Um,
Which is true. There's really, really bad writing and really, really bad
right,
directing.
because I
Um,
understand what you're coming from in terms of lore, but it's not computing because I think it's bad writing. Not it's nothing against the lore. It's the bad writing. Because this is what I'm
and it
getting
is
at.
really bad.
It
When
is.
you watch episode 3
I did.
and you watch the interact, well, like fully, because
Mm.
it does fluctuate really, really badly. If you watch the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan and how they interact with one another, it's all over the goddamn place.
Not only
It's
that,
all over the place. And it's really, really bad because it's like you aren't creating a consistent relationship between these two. And they're bickering and fighting over stupid, stupid shit and then coming together for no apparent reason.
I would like to also point out in terms of writing, um, in the second film it was okay, but when you're trying to tie it all together, it doesn't make sense, a lot of it, because, all right, let's go back to the second film. Sorry, I know we keep jumping around. Let me go talk about the second film. Anakin's character is a teenager, young adult, 10 years. He was 9, so 19, 20
Mhm.
years old at the time.
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
He still acts like the most emo teen ever. And I am so fucking frustrated with the leaders of the Jedi Council. Like, I literally was just like, I'm so mad at them because they're like, oh, just don't feel these emotions. He doesn't know how to not feel these emotions. Like, he's been under training and everything, but I don't think that it's like they should be the therapists, but the therapists are telling him, oh, just smile through
You're
it. Like, or some shit like that. Like, don't be depressed anymore. Like, shut the fuck up. What do you
because
mean?
they're dealing in absolute.
Yeah, wait,
They're dealing with absolute.
right,
And
but
that's what causes problem. No, that's part of the chaos
yeah,
that unfortunately allows Anakin to just kind of lose all control in the prequel, and ends up
that's the
being a
thing.
victim of Palpatine. But
Exactly.
here's the thing: he was originally supposed to be under the teachings of Qui-Gon Jinn, that
Mm-hmm.
actually clearly had a better understanding of emotions and managing that. He even states that Obi-Wan is ready to take the trials to become a Jedi Knight,
Yeah.
but that he could use more learning and the living force. So like
Yeah.
emotions and how to like how people function and things like that.
Yes, I do remember that. I
Because Qui-Gon was supposed to be the one to teach Anakin.
I was about to say,
Like even Anakin wasn't even going to be in training for to be a Jedi.
right,
They kind
right.
of rejected him.
They did. Yeah. I
And
just thought
so Anakin, if Qui-Gon had lived, would have been a true neutral between the dark and the light side.
Qui-Gon had lived.
Again, bad writing.
It
They
is
weren't
bad
expecting
writing.
all this shit. Dave Filoni, our Lord and Savior, has saved the franchise.
I was about to say, because I think at that point it is bad writing, because at the end of the second film, okay, again, the writing between these
Mm-hmm.
characters, it just drives me crazy.
It's really bad.
It is because,
It's
first of
really
all,
bad.
we're supposed to expect to believe that he is very close with the Chancellor when he only talks to him in the third film, like, consistently. In the first two films, he hardly speaks with the Chancellor or acknowledges him. Like, they just say hi and, like, that's about it. But we're supposed to.
And there isn't like really any kind of like easy interaction between the two. And it's
Exactly.
like that's directing. That is directing because you have Ian McDermott who's playing Palpatine, and you have Natalie Portman playing
Padme.
Padme, and you have like Samuel L. Jackson playing Mace Windu, which I mean like
I like his
it
character.
kind of works for Mace Windu, but it's still kind of like not great. But
Yeah,
like you have these powerhouse actors that are just being awkward as fuck. It's not
exactly.
just writing; it is the directing too, and it's bad. I feel bad for Hayden Christensen because I
Mm.
he could have been like a really really good actor for this,
Him being
but they did not know what they were doing. They did not know what they were doing
Hayden
with
Christensen
him.
being Anakin, right?
Yes,
I was
sorry.
about to say, I Anakin annoyed the hell out of me because
He did okay.
I will say this.
He was nothing but red flags throughout the entire
That's what I
movie,
was telling my
and that
husband.
is
Listen,
not the
listen. Okay, so funny thing. We're gonna take that. So we were watching the watch party, right?
yes, yes.
Every single time Anakin would do or say something to Padme, I'd be like, "Hey, that's a red flag. Oop, another red flag. Padme, there's a lot
It
of red flags
is.
showing. Padme, the red flags, Padme." So I was sitting there with my husband every single time. What is it? Anakin got into his feels and like would lash out or do something like kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, Padme, honey, because she is so logical and like I I personally do not like their relationship because
I don't either.
I don't like their relationship because first of all, it genuinely feels like two teens who just discovered lust and considered that love. like two teens. They're like, I have feelings for you. This must be love. And it could just be
And
lust.
Padme's anywhere between 24 and 26 years old.
Yeah, but Padme, I don't think had a good father figure in her life because she's overlooking all these fucking red flags here. Good God,
Can I just point out? Can I point out
please.
that everybody? Okay, everybody shat on Luke in the originals for kissing his sister when it was Leia that initiated both kisses.
That's what I know. We stated
I
that.
would
I
like to
agree.
just like stomp on people's throats because they're like, "Oh, Padme went after like a little kid." I'm like, "No, there was actually no like interest between the
Mm-mm.
two." It's like, "Oh, she has found someone young
Yeah,
that she can relate to in a place that she has never experienced before. She has found friendship in the first one.
not. It's not even
And then
just friendship.
it is Anakin going after her 10 years later when he is 19. He is a legal adult by every standard in the United States. He is a legal adult at
Yeah.
that point, and he is pursuing her, and
Oh,
she is
all the
turning him
time.
down.
I even told.
The only time she actually admits to her, like, actually caves to her, she admits it a couple times,
Yeah.
but caves to her feelings is when she thinks they are going to fucking die.
Not only that, I was talking
And
to
people
my
just
husband.
shit on her constantly because she's like, oh, she is going after a guy so much. I'm like,
First of all, there's only a four
that
year
is
age
not the case at
difference.
all.
It's not that young. It's a 4 years age difference in terms of. I think it's because they're like they never seen an older woman. I was talking to Jack about this too. They never seen an older woman with a younger man much in media, and it's interesting that they finally portrayed something like that in media. But for some people, for some reason, a lot of people are uncomfortable, and they're like she was predatory. In the first film, you can clearly see she went out so she could learn about the
Yeah.
world. She I don't think she actually was predatory in any way because she saw Anakin as just like a person in this world, like who was a
He was a
slave,
slave and she doesn't understand why he's a slave because he's a person.
right? And she only saw him as a person. Even in the second film, she treated him as a person. There was no feelings until I am pretty sure they were traveling, and doing the whole bodyguard princess trope kind of thing. That these feelings
Slow
develop.
burn kind of
Yeah, slow
situation.
burn. Because she even when she saw him, she was like, "Oh, you're just like that child I saw," and she only saw
Yeah,
him as the child at the time. Anakin was the one
yeah,
who I hate to say it, was the quote unquote nice guy. You know what I mean? Who only
yeah.
was her friend so
Mm-hmm.
she can get with him later. That is the vibe I got. He was so fucking creepy to her. Like creepy. And she was like, "Bro, I'm a senator. You need to show me
Absolutely.
some more respect." And he is like, "No." Like that's literally how it is. She even was like, "I'm a senator. Please show me like the kind of respect, the decorum." And he refused. He was like, "But my feelings." What? Sir, sir, fuck your feelings.
And like I hate how they wrote Anakin for this because
I
Dave
do.
Filoni did a fucking amazing job like actually giving us like a really fucking complex Anakin in the shows. Like a fantastic, and it's one of those things that's like we don't ever really see in like 2 and 3 like an actual conflict with Anakin between the light side and the dark side. It's a
Mm,
conflict of him, like it's internal conflict of like his upbringing per se
yeah.
or his training, and then just like caving to the dark side. There is actually like no good example of him like acting on behalf of the light side. Not as a Jedi, but like as a being of the light side. There are no points in that at all in those two movies.
I didn't like that. Like I really didn't. He was kind of
So it's
creepy.
just really bad
I
writing.
think so. I think a lot of it is chalked up to bad writing, and which sucks in terms of the prequels because as dense as it is, and I say that in terms like the story is very dense and like the
It is
politics and
very good.
everything.
Mhm.
They could have I don't know, they could have just the character was flawed in many ways. I did not like the character of Anakin Skywalker. He annoyed me. He reminded me of the quote unquote nice guys who just kept
Mhm.
pestering her and he's just kept pushing his feelings towards her, expecting her to fix it.
Yeah.
And she's like, "But don't you have training? Like, aren't you a Jedi?" And he was like, "But my feelings." And he keeps pushing it on her. And I'm like, "Dude, just fucking isn't there therapy in space or some
I
shit?"
kind of well, there kind of is, but he's a Jedi, so that like not really. Like I kind of hate it for him, and I'm hate kind of like defending him at this
You know
point.
him as a show. I feel like
But
the show and the movies are
but
two different
you
characters.
know, here like objectively speaking, it's like I do kind of feel bad for Anakin, especially in two,
Mhm.
um, because he genuinely does not know what to do with his emotions.
Mhm. Cuz no one properly
And
taught him how to
like
man.
his only person that he can confide in is Padme at this point, and he's unfortunately dumping it all on her, and she
Yeah.
doesn't know what to do with it
Not
because
only
he was not taught how to like use his emotions and control his emotions and what to do with his emotions because he is trained as a Jedi, and
yeah.
the current teachings of the Jedi are not healthy. Again, they have fallen from their teaching.
Not only that, I will say the only blessing in his terrible writing is that this made it so much easier for him to be manipulated by Emperor Palpatine, if that makes sense. Because
Agreed, and that's probably intentional.
it is. It could be. It
Essentially, it
could
is
be.
intentional because it's emotional and manipulative
It is.
abuse, is
It's an
what it is.
emotional manipulation, and Emperor Palpatine was the only one, aside from Qui Gon, who was like, "You can feel your emotions. Like it's fine to be emotional and whatever." But Emperor Palpatine, or I guess Chancellor at the point, was like using it against him. One other thing,
Not
it
necessarily using it against him, but it is one of those things. It's like we get this in the show, but it's like the thing with the Sith is they use their big emotions
mhm.
to access like not really like a larger portion of the Force, but be able to use the Force through their big emotions. But that's also
I'd be a
bad.
Sith.
The balance is the Jedi say no emotions, the Sith say all of the
Yeah,
emotions. The true balance is to not let your emotions control you.
I'd be a Sith. I have big emotions.
Yeah, you do have big, and that's why I'm saying it's like you might be a Sith.
But this is okay. Let's say I'm seeing this as a point of view of a Sith. Even I, as a Sith, would be like, "All right, calm down there, Anakin. Like you need to chill a little bit."
Competent,
Because like I was seriously
but
looking at
he
his
can't
character, and
because this also kind of alludes to. But here's the thing: he can't because he is being influenced very heavily by the dark side,
and the
not necessarily
midichlorians.
by the Sith, but by the dark side, and we see it parallel Luke
Mm-hmm.
in the originals because I told you Luke, as he is growing with just the Force in general,
Mm-hmm.
we see the dark side take an interest in him and start to influence him.
Mm.
Not the Sith, but the dark side. And so Anakin, as he has grown, and he is just more powerful than any other Jedi that there are or have ever been documented anyway. Like he is just going to be assaulted more by the dark side, and he doesn't know how to handle that because the Jedi don't know how to handle that.
Right.
Mace maybe because Mace can actually dip into the dark side or use abilities that are only used by dark side users.
Mm.
I don't know how to explain this.
That's okay.
Mace
Let's
is
get back.
so far into the light side that he can tap into parts of the dark side and not be influenced by it.
Okay. Well, let's go back into the third because we already
Okay.
we have about 15 minutes left to wrap up the third. So, and I say we're gonna put two and three together because most of the things on two that I see in three, I understand that in in the second film. I'm sorry, I say three, but in the second film, his mom passes away. I understand the sense of revenge to the people, and that at
Yes.
that point he loses connection to Qui-Gon because Qui-Gon was like, Anakin, no, and then disappears. Because I
You're
don't think,
cutting out really bad.
huh? Me? Oh shit! Can you hear me? Okay.
You're, yeah, you're cutting
Okay.
out really bad. Yeah, you're,
I mean, I'm okay on the stream, but I think I
you're
just
it's settled down a little bit.
yeah. So, Qui Gon was like, Anakin, no, after he, killed all the sand people and all that stuff because of what they did to his mom. I understood that. That was the pain and all that. That was actually good. I really appreciated that because it made sense, right? Um,
Yeah.
I did not like in the third film when it's Count Dooku, and this is what I'm talking about, the Chancellor and his interactions with
Mhm.
Anakin was out of nowhere, bad writing, okay? That Chancellor was captured. Anakin, has Count Dooku on his knees, by the way. And he was like, "Oh, the Chancellor was like, do it." And that's the first time you hear him as the
Sith
Sith
Lord.
Lord, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And what is it? Count Dooku realizes it because he looks at him, realizing, "Oh, the Sith Lord really wants me to die here," with fear in his eyes, which I thought was really good. And of course, Anakin kills off Count Dooku. Like he's fighting
Mm,
with himself at first.
I don't think Dooku realized. No, Dooku knew who the Chancellor was.
Yeah,
He knew.
yeah. I
It
think
wasn't fear that he was going to die or like that who the Chancellor was. It was that it's like it was a realization of how much of a pawn Dooku was to Palpatine because he realized that Sidious wanted Dooku to die
mm-hmm.
so that he can just get rid of Dooku completely so that he could have his new apprentice, Anakin.
See, they don't establish that as well.
That's what that was.
See, that's the thing. I don't think they established that well in both films because again, you don't see the interaction of Anakin and the Chancellor as
They
much.
do they kind of fucked that up a little bit.
They
Like
fucked
they
it up a
kind of
lot because like it was so.
pushed
I'm sorry, you were
they
saying?
pushed that kind of like implied relationship a little too
Mm.
much, and it's like you could have cut out just a little bit of the politics and then like established this relationship better in the movies because it's better established in the show. I know, like again, the show is the saving grace of the prequels. I'm like
That is what sucks because again, if for a lot of people they did not watch the shows. I mean, unless you're a diehard Star Wars fan like my dear Abby over here,
yep,
they. But for like theater watchers like myself,
yes,
I wouldn't.
mainstream. I would say at like before we got into like the live action shows like Mando and um the Book of Boba and all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I would feel like the Skywalker saga is was the mainstream
It
and
was
then the shows were just like quote unquote for kids or things like that.
right, exactly. Without and like you said, it was put together very well in the shows. But as a mainstream theater goer person, me, aka me, I thought
Yeah.
there was just it was horrible writing, and I genuinely believe the pieces they have are all there. It's all there to create this great story. They just fumbled a lot between the second and the third film. The first film, like I said, it was good as even a standalone film. It's cute, right? It's fun
It's
for
the
the whole
one that
thing.
again holds up the best for the prequels.
Right. But the second and third, both the
Yeah.
second and third drove me crazy. And I genuinely think it's because of bad writing. So, and this is why.
Mhm.
After, like at the very opening with the credits and the title rolls and everything,
Mhm.
you get introduced to a new character, General Grievous, which I did not remember much in the film, but I remember him from the shows. General Grievous is like a big character in the show.
Hmm.
I hated that they introduced him as some big baddie in the third film because
And they
apparently
don't really utilize him.
no, apparently he was also a big part of what happened in the second film. I did not know that. They never mentioned him at all in the second film, but then they're like, "Oh, but there's this big baddie because of the war. It's General Grievous and all this." It I call that bad writing. I call that bad
It is,
writing.
it is bad writing because Grievous is like fantastic and amazing. He is a cyborg, and
Yeah.
the reason why he coughs and wheezes, what the original reason, um, and they kind of fuck that up and kind of like retcon it, whatever. Um, the original reason Grievous was wheezing and hacking everything was because he did a kidnapping, I think of like a senator or like a diplomat or something. Mace Windu, like during the Clone Wars, Mace Windu was assigned to go after and rescue this important politician or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And while Grievous was escaping, Mace used Force Crush, which is a dark side technique, and it's the more intense version of a Force choke, which is the iconic thing of Darth Vader. And it instead of just like choking on like a specific point, so like you treat it like a Force choke is usually around the throat, but it can just be any small part of the body. Mace uses a Force crush, and it's an entire body crush, and it like permanently damages some of the internal
I
organs
think you
of.
mentioned this to me when we first started talking to, because I remember you talking about this. Yeah, that's see. Why don't they put that in the movie or some shit? That's actually really cool.
Well, I would have because it's happening during the Clone Wars, and we don't get the Clone Wars until the initial battle of Geonosis in two, and then we're getting the very tail end of it in
Three,
three.
which just ugh. Okay, that also makes me mad. By the way, because the Clone Wars does start at two. We don't get to the nitty gritty meat of it until at all because it's the it ends in three, right? I just okay.
Oh, okay. You're talking about Genndy Tartakovsky. Okay,
Oh,
so
my
there's
husband was, yeah, because we were talking about General Grievous and like who he is. Because again, it was so I was reading the scrolling text and all that, and then they introduced a new character, which I hate that they do this. They keep introducing a new character in each of these films, only to either kill him off later or like never talk to.
poorly explain them or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
poorly explain them and then never talk about them again unless you're watching a show, which I if you are okay, my qualms with the prequels. We can start wrapping up the qualms with the prequels.
There are reasons why a lot of people are really really mad with the prequels, and they're it's justified. I'm still mad with the prequels. The only reason I have anything positive to say about them is because they are the founding for the Clone Wars,
Ah, that's true.
which is a fucking amazing show.
I okay. I think we'll speed run towards the end. Okay.
Hmm.
I personally thought Anakin was maybe a little abusive to Padme in the third
He
film.
was,
Yeah.
but it's a good example of like generational abuse because he's using Palpatine as like a father
Yeah.
figure,
Yeah.
even
Which
though he says Obi-Wan is his father
that's what
figure.
I'm saying. He said Obi-Wan was in the second film. Oh my god.
But again, he is still young. He is still being abused. He does not realize he's being abused. It's generational abuse.
I guess so. I don't. And the thing of
It's
it is, like,
taking his father figure, Palpatine, and he is like reflecting his abuse onto his wife.
onto Padme, and to be honest, I hate to say it, Padme's loss was Anakin's fault. I'll stand by that for sure. And
Yes and no.
I genuinely think yes, there is
No,
generational
no, no, no,
trauma.
no. It's one of those things. It's like so we get and it would make sense when if you had watched all of it, so you
I
fully
remember.
understand
Okay.
like my flow. So you did watch enough of it to get to the opera house and the exposition of um kind of like Palpatine explaining to Anakin that he is the Sith Lord kind of or like the history of the Siths and
Hmm.
whatnot, and that there was a Sith Lord that could manipulate the Force to create life. That's the point I was telling you through exposition how Anakin came to be.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, because he was like, I kid you not. Speaking of that, because I'm glad I wanted to talk about it. When
yes.
I watched the second film, the first, excuse me, when I watched the first film, and they had like a Jesus metaphor, right?
Yes.
I literally paused it. I looked to my husband, and I said, "Is this a Jesus metaphor?" And he goes, "Yes." Like
Yes.
straight, like deadpan, yes. So much so, I thought he was either being sarcastic or he was pulling my
Mhm.
leg. I didn't believe him. So what did I do? I called up Abby. And in that same exact tone, she goes, "Yes." Because I'm like, I didn't know if Jack was like pulling my leg or is this supposed to be a actual Jesus metaphor? And Abby's like, "Yes."
Yeah.
And I'm
But
like,
I also brought up the point where it's like you even kind of questioned me a little
yeah,
bit,
because
and
I
you
was like,
couldn't
wait, so
really
we never.
argue since both me and your husband had said yes. You couldn't argue that. And when I'm like, remember, it's that time period of movies where there were a lot of Jesus metaphors popping up, like a
I mean, I
lot, and you're
guess,
like,
I guess,
fair.
but it was just it blew my mind because I thought at first I when I first heard it the way that the mother was explaining it, right? I thought that she was just did not ever want to mention her husband for any reason, like the father of Anakin for any reason.
Mm-mm.
But in reality, Anakin is Jesus. Like that's the real. I was like, okay, okay then. So, but then you had to explain it to me that it was um that
Hey
a,
yo, Pokey Poke, what's up, man?
a high Pokepope. So I okay, I it's because I thought this Jesus
Okay.
metaphor was a joke. I seriously did until I had to have it explained to me that the midichlorian could actually create life. If you have enough of
Yes.
it, it could create life. Which I
You asked me, and I'm like,
I feel
can
like my brain is
will I'm
gonna
like,
break.
if you get to three, it is exposition. You're gonna have to
Yes,
pay attention because it's exposition. But if you have questions after that, call me and I will explain it further.
it's a lot. Like it's a lot, and
Yeah, it was a big info dump during that.
I really wish that they didn't do it in the third film. I really wish they didn't. I wish they could have just spread it out between all three films because again, the second was a little dense for me in terms of
Yeah,
not with the romance thing. I feel like the romance was the lighter side of everything, which isn't even a real romance. It was just two teens. It felt like
it was
two
gross.
teenagers who just felt like this is my first boyfriend. I don't know how. That's how it was. That's how it felt to me from both ends, like from both of them. Uh, but anyway, we're gonna have to wrap up the third pretty quickly. I
But as
agree
I
with
was
you.
saying,
Yeah, go ahead.
no. Here's the thing. It's like it it it's explained in that exposition that it's just like you kind of have to take a sacrifice that you have like you can control the force by taking it from other living things. it was it wasn't Anakin. It kind of was Anakin, but it wasn't Anakin that killed Padme. He hurt her,
Mm-hmm.
yes, um, and probably like went a little too hard in like the the Force crush. Um,
Mm-hmm. A
and
little
it's
too hard.
shown that it's
Okay.
like he regret. It's implied that he regrets that because it's like from then on, instead of using a full hand crush, he only ever uses two fingers to crush somebody. Even from someone like in another fucking starship, which is a thing,
Mm-hmm.
he still only uses two fingers to crush, like to choke them out. Um, but that it was Palpatine that took Padme's life force to save Anakin during his surgery.
Oh yeah. So again, I'm gonna chalk that up to bad writing.
It is a little bit bad writing, but it's like careful observation. It is it is Padme's life force that
Mm-hmm.
saves Anakin, but it's taken from her um
By Palpatine.
by Palpatine, and it's again another manipulation tactic by Palpatine to
Yeah.
control Anakin.
No, exactly. That I do see. Which again, I just wish the relationship between the characters was written out a little better. I know we're hitting our time, but I still want to talk about one thing, so we're just gonna go over our time a little bit. Is that okay with you?
I mean, we went over last week. I don't care. It's Star Wars. Let me
Okay.
go ham,
Can we?
girlfriend.
I was gonna say, can we talk about the ending though? So again, I know we talked about bad writing, especially between the relationship between him and Obi-Wan. I felt like, and I've seen this movie before, right? I've seen it. So I'm gonna state what I have seen. Like again, I only saw half of it for our homework, but I have seen the full movie many times
You
before. I feel like maybe it's a manipulation again from Palpatine. Obi-Wan's character and Anakin's character were always kind of they weren't ever really close. I noticed this in the second as as well as the third, but they're
They had
like
a really bad time writing that. I don't know what the fuck happened with that, but there
and
is
it
actually like really fucking good relationship between the two of them in the show.
that's the
Like I
thing.
guess they're trying to like imply that it's like a father son kind of like debate in the second one, and I'm just like that's kind of like bullshitty at like 19 years old, but I still kind of get it because he's still technically like a child because
Mhm.
at 19 you're still a child, at 31 you're still a child kind of situation.
Mhm. 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 I would
But it's
also
like
I was like,
it
"Oh,
they write it so fucking bad, and this is
they
like
did."
really evident in 3 because I told you like their characters are all over the goddamn place.
Not only that, he's like, "I loved you like a brother or whatever, brother Tud, something like that." And I'm like, "I don't know about that." I felt there was more connection between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, you know, in the first film as like master and apprentice. There was a
Yeah.
tighter connection. In the second and third film, it wasn't as tight. Like it wasn't that close to me. I mean, other than the scene of when they were trying to find the lady or the shapeshifter who shot the dart, killed off.
Yes.
See, when that was
And
really good.
that's really good, and that's the relationship we see a lot like exclusively in Clone Wars.
The show.
That there's still kind of like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
the show. There's this still kind of like bickering and like, oh, you're it's like you're not my dad kind of
Mm-hmm.
situation at times, but there's this companionship and camaraderie and like fucking gremlins, the both of them really prominent and like playing off each other really, really well in the show. And they just,
Destroyed
we
it.
only get that like once or twice in the movie.
That's the
And it's
thing.
upsetting. It
It
is
is
upsetting.
upsetting.
It's like how badly they write them together.
I it I don't want to chalk it up to bad writing, but it just might be bad writing because again,
A
it
big problem with the prequels is that George Lucas had too much freedom with them,
yeah,
and
you
people
told me.
couldn't tell him no. People
Mm,
weren't afraid to tell George Lucas, like even the actors weren't fucking afraid to tell George Lucas no in the originals,
I
but they
don't know.
couldn't tell him no in the prequels. And it
Yeah, and it
really, like, he had too much control over it, and it's really apparent.
yeah, I could tell it's very it's all over the place.
Hmm.
Like I get that they're trying to input lore into it very heavily, but it kind of falls flat in my
Hmm.
opinion, especially when trying to write these characters. Anakin again was a little annoying in the third film. It's like he
Yeah.
could every chance he could to pick a fight, he did, kind of situation. Like it, I was like, you're just looking for a
I
fight at this
wish they
point.
had written that better, where it's just like it's a progressive thing
Mm-hmm.
that the more the force becomes out of balance, the more he is influenced by the dark side,
Mm-hmm.
and so he falls victim to his emotions more.
Yeah. But I was just like, every chance he
But
get,
they
he was
didn't
like,
write that. I've already
oh,
stated that it's like there weren't any real moments, especially in 3, where there wasn't any kind of swing between the light and the dark side. There was just dark side, edgelord bullshit.
oh yeah, bullshit. Edgelord bullshit. There you go. Boom. You
And that's
said
what
it.
it
It
was.
really was. It
That's
really,
all he
really
was
was.
an edge. Not even a good edge lord at that. There are some good edge lords, and he was not one of
He was
them.
not one of them. Oh my god, it was total cringe.
Anakin is not an edge lord. Vader, though.
Vader is great. Okay,
Vader is.
I will say, okay, between him, okay, I know
Mhm.
we're jumping into the
Yeah, this
not
is it's all good.
was it 7, 8, and 9? Between
Okay.
him and Kylo Ren, yes, Kylo
God
Ren. Wait, hold on,
fucking.
hold on. Kylo Ren is a whiny little bitch baby edgelord, but I prefer him over whatever the heck Anakin was in the prequels. I will say that. I maybe
I
not my.
will only accept that because again, it's like specifically talking about the movies. They wrote Anakin fucking awful, and they
They
did a
did.
pretty decent job with Kylo Ren. I don't like Kylo Ren
I like Kylo
personally,
Ren. I do like.
but he is between the Edge Lords. He is clearly the superior Edge Lord
There we go.
between
There we go. Thank you. At
Kylo
least
Ren
in the
and
film.
Anakin
Again,
Skywalker.
right. In the films. I don't know about the shows, but in the films, Kylo Ren is the better edgelord than Anakin in the prequels. Because
Like,
I we're gonna get into the final week of March. It's the final weekend of March, isn't it? It is.
pretty
So next week we're wrapping up our entire Mando madness with the final three films. And
yeah.
I think we're gonna breeze through them because again, we've talked about the three films previously in a different podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to use the last episode to be of the shows as like Mandalorian, Boba Fett,
And
Obi
the
Wan,
two bonus movies.
yes, and how that ties into the films as well as like and the Clone Wars because we as you mentioned a lot about the Clone Wars in the show, but like the introduction of
Because there
Ahsoka.
are, and I've talked about Rebels, but like with the three main animated shows, or
Mm-hmm.
like the original animated shows, so like Clone Wars, Rebels, and Resistance each fall with its respected trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So Clone Wars is with the prequels, Rebels is with the originals, and then Resistance is with the sequel.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because I genuinely think there's more in the shows, like you said, than than whatever the fuck is the movie. And again, we talked about the previous three films on the podcast before because at the time they were still being released in theaters, wasn't it? At least the last one. And I had
I think the
opinions.
last one was a recent addition, and I think
I remember
after
talking
I'd
about the
watched
last one.
the movie or watched the show, I watched the final movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'd gotten into the movies and I was talking to you about the movies and we decided to bring it up on the podcast.
And I am
Um,
ready to talk about it in depth again. Well, maybe not as in depth because we talked about it before on the podcast, but I want to
yeah.
focus more on like the last three, but also the shows like
Mhm.
The Mandalorian and all of those because my
The
husband and I
Book
were
of
talking about
Boba.
those two a little bit yesterday. Uh, but anyway,
And it's actually Mando that triggered Mando Madness
it is
month.
Mando. It's the Mandalorian that triggered the Mando madness for sure,
Because I lost my shit to you real bad. Like your
as you should.
our follower Nauseum and your follower um Silent
Hmm.
um when season 3 premiered of The Mandalorian, I lost my shit in your chat and they both talked to me
Yeah, for sure.
on different days, and then it's just like I'm still unhinged and you're like, what the fuck is going on
We have
after
to
your
talk it
stream?
out.
And I'm like, this is what happened, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, you're the one who brought this creativity in me, and I was like, we should do this. We should do instead of March Madness is Mando Madness, and I think
Yep.
it's going great, by the way. But yes,
It's
who are you? We got to wrap it up. We're a
nah.
little over time as always, talking Star Wars.
Oh, we were like post 1 o'clock twice within the past 3 months.
I know. It's a good thing topic to talk about. But yes, who are you?
I am. Where the fuck?
There you go.
Okay, there I am. I am at Mickey Ree. You can find me on Twitter under the same spelling. You can find me like losing my shit in Ricey's chat when she streams.
Oh yeah,
You
that's
can
it.
find me here on the podcast. I still don't have my computer. I'm not doing anything. I can't stream. I really want to get around to streaming like crafts and stuff. I told you that I sold like my first kind of
Yes.
commission.
If you ever do plan to commission it, you can sponsor our sponsor our podcast. Commission us.
Um, so yeah, not much for me right now. Just you can find me on Twitter losing my shit. Unfortunately, the hyperfixation right now is still Call of Duty Ghost Soap shit.
Hell yeah.
So good luck with that. And so who the fuck are you, ma'am?
Okay. I am a bowl of ricey. There I am. Look at that smiley face. You can find me here as also on Sundays. You can also find me. I'm slowly like passing out now. So you can also find me at a bowl of ricey on Twitch, as stated in the chat, on Tuesdays through Thursdays, and also Sundays now. I just started my Sunday segment called Sunday Morning Cartoons, where we are watching Jackie Chan Adventures, and it's been first Sunday. It's been great. I'm enjoying it so far. We only got to the first two episodes, so
We
it's really
told you
interesting.
that, ma'am. And
It's
the
good. It's
reason
good.
Gracie is
It's
watching
good.
Jackie Chan Adventures is because we were talking about shows we've never seen or something.
Yeah, and I
She
love
has it
Jackie Chan, and I
busting all
never saw
down,
his
and she's like, "I love Jackie Chan. I've watched all of his movies. Blah blah blah. All this stuff." He's
most of
like,
his movies.
I'm,
Apparently, there's a lot like that are based in China that I haven't seen because they haven't
"Oh,
been
they're a
like, yeah, they haven't
fuck
been
ton in
adapted to the
China."
U.S. But yes, I have seen. I love Jackie Chan. I do. I do. I do. And I never
And
saw
then
the
she had
show.
the audacity. It's like, "I've never watched Jackie Chan Adventures," and it's like, how you? I upset the chat at one point. You like set them all back.
I
And
know.
so
Yeah,
you
it's
have a
true. But we're
challenge
watching it now. Okay, we're doing it now.
fucking
Every
last
Sunday, you can hold
year.
me accountable. You can hold me
Last
accountable.
year,
Yeah.
you were supposed to watch it last year, ma'am.
You know what? A whole year. It's fine. I'm still doing it.
Ma'am.
And you can hold me accountable this time.
Yeah.
But yes,
But hey, you are actually getting around to watching it, and you're
I
loving it
am.
like all of us predicted.
I am already obsessed with Jade. I feel like a
Jade,
connection with
you
Jade.
will fucking love Jade.
I already feel
Jade's
this
still the
connection with
best.
Jade.
Uncle,
Uncle,
Uncle
yeah.
is also amazing.
I haven't gotten around to like seeing much of Uncle's character because Jade is like in the spotlight. I really appreciate
Yeah,
Jade.
Jade is in the spotlight a lot, but like when you start getting more Uncle, you will really love Uncle too.
Hell
Jade
yeah.
will, I think, will always be your favorite, but Uncle will like.
You just know. You know. But yes, so and where can you find us? Here
You
at
can find us on Twitter at What's
yes.
Your Opinion.
And here at What's Your Penton on Sunday mornings at
Yeah.
at
Not
11
What's
a.m.
Your
Central Time. Yeah.
We are not What's Your Opinion on Twitch.
What's Your Opinion podcast on Twitch? My bad. Listen, I
There
gotta
we
go.
go.
I'm about to pass out. I was up since like 7 in the morning on a Sunday.
What the fuck were and you? How have you not finished the Star Wars prequels?
I was doing
What were
stuff.
you doing?
I have a life outside of media. Somehow I have a life. Anyway,
You a millennial? A
a
life?
life?
Fucking bullshit.
I know, crazy. But thank you guys so much for listening in. I hope you enjoy your week. We will finish off Mando Madness with some talks of the Mandalorian, like we said, and everything next week. Till then, stay safe. Stay warm because apparently we had a freeze warning, which was insane. And yeah, take care of yourselves. Bye, everybody.
Can we just go ahead and give them like a little bit of a warning that now that we're getting into the shows and stuff, that we will be talking like really current spoilers. Like,
Yes.
obviously we've been talking spoilers the entire time, but like with us getting into the shows and stuff with next week, we will be getting into like current spoilers.
Right. We can also put before we talk about it, we'll just say that spoilers for those who haven't caught up on the shows, that kind of thing. So if you have to miss next week, that's fine. Catch up on your shows, then come back and talk to us. That kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Till
Don't
then.
leave your shit like I did.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.